So, you are playing a Warlock, one of the most customizable and diverse classes that the game of D&D 5e has to offer. Your turn comes up at the lower levels in combat, what do? Eldritch Blast. Comes up in higher levels, what do? Eldritch Blast. What do you do when the king won't just give you his castle? Eldritch Blast. Or if the bard tries to seduce the dragon. Help action, and then Eldritch Blast. I'm starting to see a pattern develop here. Let's see if we can spice it up a little bit. Welcome back to the table. My name's Dylan, the Tabletop Tinker, and today I would like to talk to you about that Warlock of yours. A trap that we can fall into as D&D players is finding an option that is so good it makes sense to do it almost every single turn of combat in the game. Fighter swing swords, and as illustrated in my intro today, Warlock's Eldritch Blast. Now this can be customized mechanically with a number of different invocations, but the reason I call it a trap is that when describing what we are doing at the table, we can quickly fall into just saying, well, I use Eldritch Blast, of course. And this is all well and good, but if you were like me at all and saying the same thing over and over for the same action that I feel like I have to repeat because it's the default option creates a sense of boredom for me. To me, it's uninteresting and uninspired, so what I turn to is thinking of ways to describe my attacks and spells in a way that makes sense and adds a bit of flair to keep the game interesting for me, even if I am doing the same thing on repeat. To inform me of what I would use to describe these things, such as Eldritch Blast, I turn to my class features and background to piece together a picture with which to paint. When it comes to Warlock, it's easy to turn to the diverse selection of subclasses for inspiration, of which there are 9 to pull from. The Archfey's patron, as the name would imply, hails from the Feywild and is a powerful Fey creature. The way Wizards of the Coast emulates this is by giving the subclass a set of features which beguile or enchant our enemies with either fear or charm. Given this is an opportunity of an either-or choice, this subclass instantly gives us multiple things to pull from when deciding how to flavor our Eldritch Blast. Being that a Fey is a being of tricks and schemes, we should put characteristics of that into our Eldritch Blast so we can resemble this thematically. Keep in mind that this will not alter your Eldritch Blast mechanically. For starters, I am thinking of a shimmering beam of rainbow colors which flickers in and out of sight as it travels along. This would also hint at the teleport ability you gain at level 6 known as Misty Escape and is reflective of how many depict the Feywild. When it comes to our fear versus charm dynamic, think ahead about which of these you are most likely to turn to as a character. Charming and frightening are very different tactics, and one of them should be more appealing to your character based on their personality. For a more charm-heavy build, I would describe the beam as having more curves rather than sharp edges, and lean towards those softer yellow and pinks of that rainbow coloration. For fear, the opposite would be true with those sharp jagged edges that spike through the air in hues of dark blues and angry reds. The Celestial Warlock is the healer version of the class and comes with a toolbox to help facilitate that. While the patron here is more likely to be malevolent than the other candidates with the other patrons, there's also a fiery vengeance aspect as well, shown through an ability to do additional damage with radiant and fire-based spells, and a punishing searing vengeance capstone which creates a damaging explosive energy should you have to make death saves that also leaves the opponents blinded. Though Eldritch Blast is often depicted as a forking beam with an abstract path, I would here turn to a beam-like attack which emulates either smoldering flames or a more solid-looking blast of light, whichever you prefer. There are many types of fire, and you can emulate the color of this based on some of the other spell choices you have as well, going green, for example, if you are a fan of poison damage. Keep in mind what we are doing here is trying to make this spell a reflection of who the character is, as well as the patron they are deriving the power from. The Fathomless patron represents a dark and likely ancient power that hails specifically from the unknown depths of whatever realm you find yourself in. Leviathan, ancient squids, or even a being from the elemental plane of water of pure elemental potential expressed through you. There are 3 major tenets of this subclass: water, cold dark depths, and tentacles, but is otherwise very simple and straightforward. The best way to flavor your Eldritch Blast with this class is to lean into either the more abstract water-based ideology or even the summon tentacles that deals force damage and disappears, which would actually tie in really well to the Guardian Coil and Grasping Tentacle features that are used to different effect later on in the class. You could even make your Eldritch Blast here a geyser of water that comes from your hand like a fire hose, but instead of a more clean and pure water source, make it a salty brine that leaves a stench in the air and leaves the opponent feeling cold where the blast would hit, with no mechanical benefit, of course. A Fiend patron is going to be one of 2 types of beings, an Archdevil or a Demon Prince. These 2 entities, while similar categorically, are very, very different. So different, in fact, that they are diametrically opposed in almost every way. Depending on which type your specific patron is, should inform how your Eldritch Blast manifests. Most likely your patron will be an archdevil of some kind, given the propensity of devils to make deals and forge pacts and bonds that benefit them more than the opposing party. In this case, that's you. In such a case, you couldn't go wrong with a blast of rich red flame with the accompanying smell of sulfur. If you would like to differentiate this, then say the Celestial Warlock and what I suggested there, a miniature meteor blast of stone and fire would make just as much sense and be flavorfully fulfilling. Demons are a bit more abstract as chaotic evil embodied, and so skinning the Eldritch Blast is a bit more complicated. I would start with a sound here. What initially comes to mind would be a scream of agony or other loud and piercing noise that generates discomfort, emotionally speaking. You can always keep the flames, but make them a dark black instead of the traditional red, and have them emanate no heat. You could flavor this into some of the fire spells that you pick up with the subclass as well, and expand on an entire toolbox for your Warlock in this way. A Warlock with the Genie patron has a wide selection of potential candidates from which to pull their power. They are all, at the end of the day, a Genie in some form or another, although I also like to pull in the Elder Elementals for this as well, but you get to make the secondary choice of customization with them based on the type of Genie you would like to pick: fire, water, earth, or air. The way you would flavor this is relatively straightforward. Just have your Eldritch Blast emulate the element that corresponds with the Genie you have selected, as well as the additional spells that you pick up along with it. There is some variation here, as you could go with a single larger rock for earth, or even a smaller swarm of pebble-like rocks that act as a concentrated cloud instead. For an air Genie, it could just as easily be a compressed ball of air as it could be a lightning strike. Keep in mind, again, that none of these alter your damage type, unless of course you have multi-classed into an Order of Scribes wizard, in which case more power to you and your Eldritch Blast. If you have heard of H.P. Lovecraft and know the works collectively known as the Cthulhu mythos, then you understand and comprehend the concepts of the Great Old One patron, or at least as much as one can understand that which is unfathomable. The Great Old One is a mysterious force from the cosmos and is interdimensional in its truest form that chooses its patrons for reasons that are equally unknowable, but are rarely anything good, as our sense of morality tends to be beneath the scope of such beings. Flavoring an Eldritch Blast based on this concept is a bit more unconventional than the previous offerings by the Warlock class, however, it very much can be done. These beings break reality, and your go-to cantrip should emulate that. When you use it, consider instead of using an actual archaic blast to represent your patron and their powers, use instead a break in reality where a mirror-like crack forms between you and your target when it reaches them, delivering damage from a source from beyond. I would accompany this blast with whisperings of an ancient and forgotten tongue, as cults and chanting are often associated with this type of power and are some easy thematic flair to be plucked from culture and draped around your character's shoulders as a part of their theming. This is one you can truly get creative as per the nature of the patron itself. Hexblades are likely to use their Eldritch Blast much less often than the other subclasses offered by the core Warlock class. They are designed to be the melee version of the otherwise spellcaster-focused Eldritch Invoker. However, the uniqueness of this subclass allows us to explore some very unique concepts. The Hexblade is an amalgamation of its parts, the hex and the blade, cursing enemies to weaken them before cutting them down with the blade that acts as a direct link to the patron, or even functioning as the patron itself. An easy go-to here would be to throw the blade or swing the blade and create a spectral form of which hits the target for cantrip damage. I would have the spectral form be a wispy purple or blue, as those are my preferred Warlock colors for representing Eldritch magic in my games personally. Having some unknown runic language along the edge of this form would amp up the flair a little bit as well. Alternatively, giving the spectral form a different base than your packed weapon itself is also quite doable while sticking with the theme. Using a ghostly dagger to represent this blast instead that disappears upon impact and emanates from your hand is just as feasible. Feel free to go wild here, but I really encourage using some form of weaponry here to keep the theming of the Hexblade Warlock. I am going to lump the Undead and the Undying here, as they are really quite similar, though not without difference, and patrons are really likely to be interchangeable. The theme of death and the powers of the grave is a thread that remains common among both offerings. Enervation and negative energy are common tropes in fantasy and D&D and other like-minded TTRPGs. A simple black, outlined in white, crackling electrical-like beam would certainly do the trick well enough, but there are other options as well. Why not describe a ghostly smoky skull forming in your palm that shoots out and grows in size, attempting to swallow your target, dealing that sweet, sweet force damage as it clamps its teeth upon them and dissipates into mist. Or, to go another route, what about spectral chains that appear beneath them and try to pierce their souls, which simulate that ever-expansive grave of the trodden earth below, trying to claim another victim offered up as a prize to your patron? There is no end to the unique ways you can alter the description of spells like Eldritch Blast to suit your character more personally. You can add to the storytelling, create a deeper lore for the world as a whole, and makes the whole game more engaging for the entire table. What sort of ways would you alter the visual representation of some of your characters that you are currently running or are hoping to run in the near future? Please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, you can let me know by liking the video, and subscribing to the channel will inform you when new videos come out so you can continue to be a part of these conversations. I hope to see you when the shop opens back up, and until then, keep working towards a better game.